It was a calm Thursday when they arrived. It simply ships the size without any warning or notification. Of cities as if they owned the sky, blotting it out. People with their phones out gazed up from fields, rooftops, and freeways. Streaming live. While some prayed, others wept. I was among those who lighted a cigarette. And waited. It wasn't because I was bold. I was simply too exhausted to give a crap. No longer. I have witnessed battle before. South Sudan, Syria, and Iraq. However, this was not a war. The slaughter was clad in steel, and superiority. The Council was aware. Those arrogant alien jerks were aware that Earth wasn't prepared. In other words, they believed we weren't. I had intelligence. Deep intelligence. When I was still in the files of Orion Black. Earth had been marked as volatile by them. Too disorganized and culturally erratic for easy subjugation. Nevertheless, they are green. Ignited it nevertheless. Why? Because they had faith in technology, numbers, and supremacy. Spit was what they didn't believe in. Human resentment. When the ship started shooting. It wasn't precision strikes on New York. Manhattan was just annihilated. Vanished in a single flash of white heat. No mercy, no compromise. My little brother was in Manhattan. On my tablet, I saw him disappear. Only pixels going white. Suddenly dark. Just gone, no drama, no shouts. I sensed it at that moment. That chilly. Something silent within me. Something older, something that isn't anger or grief. Primordial. Retaliation. I headed west. No specific destination in mind. All I had was a bag, some old contacts, and a goal I hadn't had for years. Word quickly got out. Cities were collapsing. Governments dispersing. The United Nations broke like glass. NATO fell apart. China closed itself off. America. She was gushing blood. America, however, bleeds loudly. Each diner I observed it growing in every wayside town where I stopped. Nor give up, nor panic. Something more vicious. Roadblocks are being set up by armed men. Satellite dishes being dragged onto school roofs by teenagers. Attempting to intercept extraterrestrial messages. Older veterans distributing ammunition from rusted trunks. They assumed we would roll over like everyone else. Vitari, Andari, and the when the sky grew dark, they all bowed their knees. However, Earth wasn't brought up that way. I encountered the first wave of opposition in Denver. Not organized, not military. Simply infuriated people with excessive weaponry and insufficient terror. They referred to themselves as Ashers, after the cities that turned to ash. I didn't inquire to participate. I just gave them my credentials and a design of the extraterrestrial dropships I had taken from the files, and declared, I want blood. We destroyed our first ship that evening. Suicide drones, EMP bursts, crude DIY rockets, and when that metal. The ground shook like thunder as the monster dropped into the Rockies like a dying god, and everyone cheered. The aliens weren't divine beings. They were bleeding. They let out a yell. And he stared at me with peeling scales and huge eyes as we pulled one out of the wreckage. With something he didn't anticipate. Fear. Something he muttered in that. Their tongue was jumbled. Although I didn't comprehend it, one of the texts subsequently translated. In other words, they warned us about you. I hadn't smiled since Manhattan till then. Because they knew, and I knew now. Even the The Council was aware that Earth was a mistake. A planet that is too untamed, too irate, and too filthy to overcome cleanliness. Nevertheless, they arrived. We will now force them to pay for each and every drop of blood they believe they are due. The days that followed were no longer days. They seeped into one another like unclean water. Dreams were a luxury, and sleep came in 30-minute scraps. The most of us were also too angry, too damaged, too wired to give a damn. Not that we were an actual army. Not quite yet. However, we possessed the most hazardous weapon an army may possess. Goal. We also suffered a loss. It's funny how quickly people adjust to conflict when they are facing the wall. The Ashers changed in less than a week from a dispersed bunch of ex-military and gun nuts into a vicious hit-and-run group. No official ranks or uniforms, just who was capable of shooting, thinking, and killing without blinking. I fell in the middle of the second and third groups. Whatever happened, the aliens' boots were now on the ground. 4 boots. They were 8 feet tall, 4-legged, and scaled, like reptile centaurs. Armor with muscle underneath that flexed. They didn't need to talk, so they didn't. They had drones that could detect a heartbeat beneath 50 feet of concrete, and they possessed plasma weapons the size of engine blocks. However, they were confused about one issue. Humans are not fair fighters. We used rusted explosives, homemade pressure mines made from buried truck batteries, and crude explosives to rig their landing zones. Shrapnel. We used Molotov drones and inexpensive jammers to cut them down as they swept in tight formations. Additionally, when we hunted while they dispersed, I was particularly struck by one opportunity. Colorado Springs. They had stationed one of its mobile command towers close to an Air Force base that was partially destroyed. We were aware that they utilized it to organize field patrols. Eliminating it sent a message, but it wouldn't end the battle. We didn't request consent. 8 of us were present, primarily veterans, a few of civilian tech heads, and an unidentified sniper. Kilo was written on a sewn patch. Under cloud cover, we made our move at night. The vision was terrible, and the rain came down like needles. However, we required it. In that manner, our equipment was antiquated. A portion of it was repaired using scrapyard materials and military stocks that have been discontinued. They were equipped with thermal scanners. We were lined with foil and mud blankets. They had reconnaissance drones that flew high. We had mirrors and bird nests. The use of camouflage nets between overpasses. It was referred to as a suicide run. We dialed. It repays. We were within range by 0300. Kilo was sitting atop a water tower that was shattered. Gideon, a former Marine, was with me. He had burns over half of his face and eyes. Had not grinned for 20 years. He carried a modified 050 and was silent and methodical. Cal that gave him the appearance of a walking tank. We slithered through dirt, debris, and the shattered remnants of homes that once housed families. The alien skyscraper throbbed with a drab green illumination. It wasn't only technology. It had life. If you went close enough, you could hear its breathing. It has a biomechanical nervous system of some sort. Horrible. Wonderful. Through communications, Kilo murmured. I have 2 scouts on the left. 1 drone on a tower. Not a single civilian. Excellent photo. Light it, I said. After 3 seconds. With a pop, the drone fell from the sky. The scouts came next. There was one that went through the head. Mid-turn, the other was caught. No. Screams, sounds, silence, and only wet meat. We made quick progress. Within the tower, it felt as though a machine had ingested you. The walls throbbed. The floors had a heartbeat. There's something about alien technology that makes you feel like prey. In a facility, not a soldier. The charges were placed close to what the technicians referred to as the core spine. Appeared more like to an